Android vs iPhone. 15 years of rivalry and innovation. During the last decade and a half, Apple and Google's rivalry has helped each company become better. When we play against each other, we always raise each other's game global. Global tennis star Venus Williams once said, referring to a competition with sister Serena, who, like Venus, was a dominant Grand Slam player. During our time in the sport, the Williams sisters grew up with competition in their blood, challenging each other on the court and learning to read each other's movements so precisely that they could respond with the exact play needed to counter and win. Competing against the best helped Venus and Serena reach the top of their game, learning how to beat not just each other but also other rivals in the sport in much the same way Apple and Google have done. Jobs didn't take the role, but Google found a CEO in Eric Schmidt, who in 2006 became part of Apple's board of directors. There was so much overlap that it was almost as if Apple and Google were a single company. Journalist Stephen Levy wrote in his 2011 book In the Plex how Google thinks, works, and shapes our lives. Things didn't stay as cozy, however. Jobs' fury around Google and its smartphone software is well documented, and the many lawsuits involving Apple and various Android partners showed that Jobs was serious about his allegations of theft. But the reality is that both Apple and Google have taken inspiration from each other for years, and that neither company would be where it is today without the work of the other. So because this year saw Android mark its 15th anniversary of the first Android-based phone, the T-Mobile G1, let's take a look back at the journey the companies have taken to becoming the most dominant forces in the tech world and how their competition pushed them to innovate. Smartphones have arguably changed the world more than any other invention in human history, from radically altering how we interact with one another to creating a whole new category of companies that deal in various mobile technologies. And though Jobs may have been vitriolic about Android in the early days, it's clear that ideas and inspirations have echoed back and forth between Apple and Google in the years since. During the last 15 years of competition between the two companies, it's often felt like we've been watching siblings bickering at playtime, falling out over who had which toy first, or crying to their parents when the other one took something that wasn't theirs. Most siblings will argue to some extent throughout their lives, but history is also rife with pairing that through spirited competition pushed each sibling to succeed. Google's business model is primarily one of a service provider, though, and not a hardware manufacturer. It makes its money chiefly from selling advertisements across all its platforms, and so it typically benefits from a mass market approach. Android itself is free for companies to use, hence the large number of installs. But to use Google services, for example, like Gmail, YouTube, Chrome, and so on, along with access to the Google Play Store, companies must pay license fees to Google. Still, the free use of Android is why you will find the operating system on phones, right? From Samsung, Motorola, OnePlus, Oppo, nothing, and a huge variety of other brands. And yes, on Google's own Pixel phones, Google's business model is primarily one of a service provider, though, and not a hardware manufacturer. It makes its money chiefly from selling advertisements across all its platforms, and so it typically benefits from a mass market approach. Android itself is free for companies to use, hence the large number of installs. But to use Google services, like for example Gmail, um, what else? Chrome, YouTube, and so on, along with access to the Google Play Store, companies must pay license fees to Google still. The free use of Android is why you will find the operating system on phones from Samsung, Motorola, Oppo, and OnePlus, or even the Nothing phone, and a huge variety of other brands. And yes, on Google's own Pixel phones, you also find all this we are talking about. You know, Apple, however, is a closed shop. Only phones can run iOS, and Apple has every intentions of keeping it that way. It has full control. You get that? It has full control over how that software works on its phones and charges for the developers accordingly and charges developers accordingly for apps sold in its own app store, and how it can be best optimized for the hardware. That's why Apple phones typically perform better than many high-end Android phones despite the hardware, you know, often being less high spec on paper. Android by its nature has to take more of a one-size-fits-all approach, where each new version has to run well on a huge variety of devices with different screen. I think I look good on that. With different screens and under the hood components. Android struggled with the arrival of tablets, a software designed for 4-inch phones suddenly had to stretch to fit screens much larger in size. Android 3.0 Honeycomb was primarily designed for tablets, but various issues meant it didn't hang around for long, and some of its features were simply absorbed into future versions. Apple takes a different approach. Though at first it used iOS for both devices, now it keeps iOS solely for its phones, optimizing for the smaller screen sizes with the Power iPad iOS as the software for its tablets.